What up, TCK Potters? I'm your host, Sky Guasco. This is episode 190, just 10 away from 200. Episode 190 of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast. Today we are continuing our series of sophomore players coming into 2020, and today we are breaking down the wide receivers, sophomore wide receivers, joined always by Lucas Kaser. Lucas, how we feeling, my man?
I'm excited to break down this, what turned out to be really good rookie receiver class when everyone was the opposite of the running backs, bashing on all of them, so I'm excited.
2014 pretty much set the bar for wide receivers, right?
Yeah.
But this class as a rookie collection was certainly very impressive as a rookie class. And honestly, coming into year two for a lot of these guys, I'm super hyped on them. And we all kind of know in fantasy about that third-year breakout for wide receivers traditionally. So a lot of these guys are not even in their prime yet, which is pretty exciting. So there's a ton of receivers that we're going to break down. Of course, tune back, please, to Tuesday and Thursday of last week as we got into our quarterbacks and our running backs as well. Lucas, before we get too far into it, I'd love for you just to please repeat. I know for us it's repetition, but for folks just tuning in, please let us know exactly how you are going to be breaking down these players based on hit rate. So please explain what a hit rate is and how you actually use that for your analysis.
Yeah, for sure. So hit rate refers to taking the fantasy finish in X year that you want to break down. So this year, year two is what we're breaking down. We'll do year three next week or next month, actually, after the draft. So the fantasy finish we are setting in this case, it's going to go wide receiver 1, top 12, top 24, top 36, top 48. The percentages of those guys hitting from 2010 to 2019 in terms of the samples that we have for second-year receivers, third-year receivers, rookie receivers, all three the first years. Those will be on our draft guide April 26th. Dwayne, Dwee's Nuts on Twitter, he put these together. He's a beast. I already texted him this morning when I was going through and writing all these things down page after page. I told him he was a beast for doing this for me, so I'm excited to sort of truth episodes, probably like beginning truth episodes for these guys.
Make sure to go follow up Dwee's Nuts and the rest of our team on Twitter. Great work behind the scenes. Of course, you can find all of their work along with ours at tckpod.com. Our website is constantly building. We will drop kind of some mentions, if you haven't heard it yet, on some draft guide preview coming up in this month. We'll let you know about that at the end of the episode, but there's a lot of this information getting built behind the scenes. So shouts out to our team always for all the hard work that they are doing. Lucas, man, we got a lot of names to cover today, so let's jump right into it. The way that I have listed these names is, again, not on preference per se, although a lot of these guys kind of fall in line with how I'm feeling about them, but less about preference, and I listed them per their 2019 fantasy rank at the end of the season. Now, just like I did with quarterbacks and running backs, I want to immediately preface, not all these players played 16 games, and actually 1, 2, 3, 4 of these players played all 16 games. The rest of these guys played less than 16. Either they didn't have the opportunity as a rookie, or they had injuries or anything else like that. So it's less about their fantasy finish, and it's more about their points per game. And then I'm going to break down my redraft and dynasty rankings at the end of the episode. We'll turn it over to Lucas as well to drop in his dynasty rankings as well. So we got a couple different tiers of these guys. The first grip of them is going to be the players that produced as rookies, and then they're coming into a year two swing with a fully defined role and looking to upgrade on that. And the back half of this episode are going to be guys that didn't really get the opportunity as a rookie, but could certainly find value late in dynasty for sure, maybe even in a redraft, but definitely in year two, either recovering from injury or seeing another opportunity here for wide receivers in year two. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it, man. First one off the board, my man, A.J. Brown, Tennessee Titans, finished as wide receiver 23, played a full 16-game slate last year, and had 13 PPR fantasy points per game. A.J. Brown, one of my favorite receivers in general. I think he's just Julio Jones all over again. If you follow him on Instagram or Twitter, you know that A.J. Brown's favorite player is Julio Jones. That's why he wears number 11. He kind of looks like him as he plays. Love AJ Brown. Why don't you break him down for us? And with them committing to Ryan Tannehill, committing to the run game there in Tennessee, re-signing and bringing back Derrick Henry, do you think that AJ Brown has, kind of has a tempered ceiling, or in year two, do you think he can actually exceed where he was at last year at wide receiver 23?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to give my breakdown because that's going to kind of answer your question on how I feel about him. So he was a round 2 pick last year. So in that sample of year 2 wide receivers from round 2, there's a total of 37 of them. So this is a common spot. We see it every year. The early day 2 picks are usually receivers. They kind of, one falls, everyone freaks out, and it ends up nothing happens. AJ Brown was kind of like that. He went pretty high. People were pumped about him. But the out of that sample, 37 of them, 14 of them, 14%, hit the top 12, wide receiver 1 through wide receiver 12 rating second year. The next top 24, which obviously includes the top 12, is 22%. And then it falls down to 27%, 35%. So basically, I think you kind of have to find like sweet spots in these. And to me, I kind of see that sweet spot. The least you could say like jump, how 14 to 22 is 8%, 22 to 27 is 5%. I know that's not like a direct like he's going to fall there, but there's like the least jump. That means that there's more people in that gap. So to me, that kind of leaves AJ Brown on the wide receiver 2-3 turn, which we not necessarily saw last year. I think you said wide receiver 23 in PPR. But like I said, I look at all numbers. So to me, it's like super inflated, just the way that, one, the stats line up, and two, you watch the games. Obviously, he exploded. I don't have my consistency charts all the way done yet, so I don't have the percentages of those. But the team pass plays was 8.23 less per game than the average of the NFL. And that's not changing. Unless they I don't even know. Unless what? They have Derrick Henry back. That's going to stay. Maybe they go down to 7. Okay, 1 play a game. 1 more pass play a game. Not going to matter. His snap share was 72.3, which that was super low in the top 100 receivers last year in PPR. I didn't write down the finish for some reason. 59th in routes run. Also not a good ranking for a top receiver, but he was third in yards per route run. That I think will stick because you look at guys like Will Fuller, Tyreek Hill. It's the same thing every year. That type of receiver using that role, it's just going to happen that way. However, I do think the routes run will maybe improve because Corey Davis just ain't it. Neither is Adam Humphries. I think everyone knows that. So when I think of A.J. Brown, I know I'm not going to be drafting him this year because his ADP is not going to lower at all. It's going to stay the same. It's just a little too much for me because I think I put him as the wide receiver 20 to 28 range. As of now, I don't have my set rankings, but I don't know. It's just in my head, I just know that it's he's not a consistent receiver. That's not how I don't want to say I never draft boom bust receivers, but there's just something about it. And especially when I watched the games last year, he just really struggled against number 1 corners, in terms of just straight press coverage. And unless they add, I don't know, Corey Davis is still the 2, so they don't really need to worry about him. I don't know. It's just an awkward spot, I think, to sort of project where he's at because all the stats go opposite of him, but the hit rates think highly of him. So it's just kind of a weird spot for me. So I think out of this list, I'm just going to give it right now. I would rank DK, Terry. I don't want to say Hollywood, but they're going to kind of play similar roles if they're both playing full 16 games, so it'd be close out of those two.
In that dynasty or redraft?
I'd say dynasty. Redraft for sure, it'd be DK. Then probably Terry's pretty close. They're probably same ADP for me.
So I'm definitely higher on A.J. Brown than you are overall in rankings for sure. And I hear all your points, and I don't disagree with any of them. What makes me the most excited about A.J. Brown with the Titans, last year he had 52 receptions, 1,051 yards, and 8 touchdowns over 16 games. Of the rookie wide receivers from last year that finished as a wide receiver 41 or better, so that's A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, and Deontay Johnson of the Steelers. Of those 5 receivers, A.J. Brown had the fewest receptions, but he had the most yards and the most touchdowns. I hear you that the Titans are definitely not a pass-friendly offense, which obviously they're not. But even in that, as a rookie, with 2 different quarterbacks over the season, he had over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think his receptions get to 80, probably at least. I could see him getting to 1,300 receiving yards potentially if he's able to beast out, and I don't see why he gets any less than 8 touchdowns. So for me, that's an easy wide receiver one. So I actually have him ranked in redraft. I've got him at 13, which I know is a little bullish. I've even got one of these guys a little bit higher than that, but I've got him at 13 in redraft and 14 in dynasty. I just believe in the talent, and as much as the Titans like to run the ball, when they do pass it, Ryan Tannehill led the league last year in his games played in efficiency, and especially off the play action. So guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and Ryan Tannehill aren't sexy because they're not throwing bombs like we're used to in fantasy football anymore, but they're extremely accurate, they're extremely efficient, and guys like A.J. Brown who can get open, especially in year two when he's able to do that, and facing top-tier cornerbacks as a rookie is not easy for anybody. So I think in year two, he's going to be able to really flourish, and I expect the Titans actually to bring in a wide receiver eventually as well. And Corey Davis isn't sexy, but I think he's still going to command some sort of looks. Jonnu Smith will help a little bit, take some work off, and then if they pull up to try to stop Derrick Henry, that just lets A.J. Brown go even farther. So I like A.J. Brown a lot. I know that I'm basically completely banking on the entirety of his upside in my rankings. I just think it's that real, and I feel the same about DK Metcalf, which we'll get to in just a second. So A.J. Brown, I've got at 13 in redraft, 14 in dynasty. He finished as 23 as a rookie in 2019. Let's move on to Terry McLaurin of the Redskins, finished as wide receiver 25 last year. That's 13.7 PPR fantasy points per game, almost a full point higher than A.J. Brown. He played only 14 games for the Redskins. How do you feel about Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, so this is I'm just gonna say it. Dynasty is like 10 greater signs than redraft for Terry McLaurin, and here's why. So he was a third-round receiver. I'm just double-checking to make sure. Yep, third-round receiver for the Redskins out of Ohio State. In that sample, third-round receivers in the year two, no one's ever hit wide receiver one in the second year, and only 5% of the 41, I think that's probably like 5, 6 maybe, have hit wide receiver two numbers. That is very concerning for Terry. And the other part that concerns me is out of those third rounders, the receivers were Cooper Kupp, Michael Gallup, Tyler Lockett, John Brown, Keenan Allen, Marquise Goodwin, Mohamed Sanu, T.Y. Hilton. This scares me because none of them played on this Redskins team with Dwayne Haskins, with no O-line. I'm not saying Terry's bad. The man's a beast. I mean, I was all over him last year after week one because of air yards. That was the only reason why. Air yards, and I watched that game on TV. I just, he was a beast. But the numbers don't add up for him. The team doesn't add up for him. So we'll see where his ADP's at post-draft. Because if he's right where DK, which he's not right where DK's at in dynasty startups, that could obviously be different in redraft. When it actually comes to redraft time, if he's close to DK, close to A.J. Brown, which I don't think he will be, kind of in that range of like Tyler Boyd and Deebo Samuel, I'm going to take everyone but Terry in redraft just to play it safe because I don't want it to completely fall off. And another, I think, stat too to kind of prove the numbers is in year three for that same sample size, 13% hit the top 12, so 0 to 13, and then 5 to 13. So it's more of like maybe it's a third-year type guy. And if you think of all those receivers I just listed, it took Kupp a couple years to finally come into his own. It took Lockett a couple years. Gallup was a year two guy. I don't even remember about John Brown. I would assume it's kind of similar because maybe that deep target needed to hit. Keenan Allen was kind of right away. Marquise Goodwin had flashes, and then T.Y. Hilton probably took a little bit because he had I think, did he play with Reggie Wayne? That might be pushing it for years, but
yeah, and Keenan Allen was hurt the first couple of years of his career, and then John Brown, if you wheel it all the way back to his Cardinals days, that's when Larry Fitzgerald was still real fits, and they also had Jerron Brown, who was kind of the same dude but taller. So John Brown was kind of struggling when he realized he had that sickle cell trait that was affecting his running ability. Anyway, so point well taken though. I feel 100% the same about Terry McLaurin, and I think that was your version. We need a slogan for the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast anyway, And TCK Pod doesn't count because that's kind of just our like acronym, quicker version to say it. But our slogan is like some version of like less about the player, more about the situation. But we need like a cool, like
it's true
slang
though.
version of it.
Like you can't tell me that you like. I mean, you can tell me you like Terry McLaurin even over AJ Brown or DK. Like, cool, yeah. I think he's going to be a better receiver in the long term because he's that prototype wide receiver one. He's not a deep threat boom bust guy. DK, just the lack of passing offense for the for the Seahawks, just I think will limit him in general. I think Terry will be a wide receiver one when that team. He just reminds me of Courtland Sutton. Like Courtland Sutton just had a better situation, and they just dominate as the wide receiver one on the team. But like that's why I put dynasty is greater than redraft right away, and I've been taking him a lot of dynasty leagues. He's going like round 5, round 6, and I would be okay with him as my wide receiver one in dynasty, but I don't know. Like as much as I don't want to be off him in redraft because he's going to see a lot of targets, I feel like I kind of have to be with sort of how the numbers line up for him in his career.
I agree. Terry McLaurin right now, I have him ranked at 31 redraft, 25 in dynasty. And again, we don't need to get into Dwayne Haskins too much more, but a lot of my ranking right now has to just do with the uncertainty of the quarterback position in Washington. I just don't know how it's going to be. We're in April. My rankings obviously are going to fluctuate throughout the summer. Right now, I'm just not sure, so I've got him lower. He is basically, I'm looking at my rankings, a quick glance. He is basically my lowest ranked wide receiver one, other than Julian Edelman is lower than him in my rankings, and Will Fuller, if you count him as the number one in Houston right now. Just again, because there's question marks in New England and Houston. Terry McLaurin is basically my lowest ranked wide receiver one right now.
I mean, that makes sense. I would Edelman I'm probably going to have higher just because it's kind of the same situation with him every year, and I've always been higher on him as much as it's kind of like gross to have him high in your rankings. I think it's where he ends up ultimately. I think that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a worse situation. If DJ Chark wasn't a deep threat, I'd probably put like if D.D. Westbrook was the number one receiver, that'd probably be the worst situation. But yeah, I think that Redskins are gonna have like the number one pick next year. Mark it right now.
Yep, we'll see what happens. So Terry McLaurin, 58 receptions, 919 yards, and 7 touchdowns in just 14 games. So give him 2 more games, he's probably over 60 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which would then probably surpass what A.J. Brown put up. So Terry McLaurin is the man for sure. But again, we're just not 100% sure of what they're going to do there in Washington. So I totally agree with you, Lucas, there. With them bringing in new people, we just don't know what Ron Rivera is going to do. They have 6 running backs. We don't know who the quarterback is, blah, blah, blah. So Terry McLaurin, beast, though, and great dynasty pickup and stash for the next couple of years. I think he's going to be a great third-year mark when we figure out what's going on with them. All right, let's move on to DK Metcalf, Seattle Seahawks, wide receiver 35, played all 16 games, 11.1 fantasy points per game. I just mentioned I'm extremely bullish on him. I'll just put it out there right now. I've actually got him a spot higher than A.J. Brown in both redraft and dynasty. He's 12 in redraft, 13 in dynasty for me. I'll explain why he's so high, but I'll let you take it away on DK.
Yeah, so he got drafted in the same round as A.J. Brown, round 2. He walked in with his shirt off to Pete Carroll. That is still the funniest video I've ever seen.
Smart move.
That was so awesome. And ultimately, everyone was down on him because he can't turn around a cone. And it was better than Brady, but Brady dropped the ball in the Super Bowl. DK can catch a ball, so do the translation there.
Honestly, bro, if I look like DK Metcalf, and I'm a little past my prime as far as my fatigue goes these days, but if I look like DK Metcalf, I would not own a shirt. There's no way.
Oh, not a chance. And then
I would have like a down coat. Just in case, I live in the Pacific Northwest, it gets cold and rainy, but I definitely would not own a shirt.
That's true. And then Pete Carroll took his shirt off, and then, perfect match. And they're going to keep rising. So he has the same hit rate, so 14% wide receiver 1, and then 22% of the 37 wide receiver 2. Like I said, his ceiling's a little bit capped, sort of like A.J. Brown in a sense, just because of a completely different situation. But, he'll be on the field for all the snaps, but they're just a run-heavy team. So he was 25th in routes run last year, but he was wide receiver 33 overall, 20th in unrealized air yards. And it's kind of weird. He has in that sample, they have better odds this year, him and AJ Brown, to be a wide receiver 1 than next year. So like something just like happens to where maybe like I don't know, like they just like don't progress into their third year, I guess. But I think where I see the higher upside is Rashad Penny's hurt. He's not going to start right away. Carson's banged up, and there's probably not going to be a training camp, guys. They're going to throw the ball a little more, maybe at the start per se, and I think slowly Tyler Lockett's targets are getting taken away. If you watched Seattle last year, yes, Lockett was good at the beginning of the year, but he kind of fell off at the end because it's very easy to game plan around a guy like Tyler Lockett if you just stuff the middle of the field, but you can't game plan against DK Metcalf. Like, you just can't. It's not like you can't game plan against Julio Jones. There's a reason Julio Jones is the top 5 fantasy receiver every year when he's getting double, triple covered, and he's a top 5 fantasy receiver without catching touchdowns. Like, there's a reason that happens. So, like, what I'm trying to say is I think if the rushing attempts go down, which I can't tell you if it's going to or not, I don't know, I see a higher ceiling with DK. DK is the body of a wide receiver 1. I think he'll slowly take over Lockett. And him having a higher shot to be that wide receiver 1 through 12 this year than next year, I just kind of want to say it's going to happen this year more so than waiting for maybe that to even out with him and Lockett.
I totally agree, man. I really do think that with I think first of all, they're going to draft another running back. Secondly, we've been saying it for years on the podcast. Russell Wilson maybe is, I know Patrick Mahomes, I get it, could be if they turned him loose. If Andy Reid had Russell Wilson, in my opinion, he would be Patrick Mahomes. I'm just going to go out and say that.
Yeah.
He has the dual threat. He doesn't run as much as he did when he was younger, but he can. He's very, very cerebral, rarely makes mistakes. He can make every throw, and he's very, very accurate down the field. Chris Carson is beat up. I love Chris Carson as a running back, but he is beat up. Rashad Penny's beat up. I don't know if he's going to last in general. They're going to bring in another rookie running back, but what does that actually mean? They have a plethora of tight ends, but no one particular guy to take away those targets. You just mentioned it. Tyler Lockett actually had a career year last year, 110 targets, 82 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. But I think that's going to be his ceiling, and it'll probably even lower with DK Metcalf in year 2. I think DK becomes the number 1 pretty much just automatically in Seattle in general. They're going to throw the ball, I would say, at least a third more than they did last year because they're probably just going to have to, and Russell Wilson can do that. Secondly, their defense is not what it used to be. It's continually dwindling. So they're going to be in negative game scripts where they're able to throw the ball a lot more. And third, DK Metcalf led the league last year in red zone targets. Now, he didn't catch all those, obviously, but it's the Julio Jones thing. Like, if you watch Falcons film, it will make you physically angry at how often Matt Ryan throws the ball 4 yards over Julio Jones' head because he doesn't want to throw a pick. But if he threw it 2 yards lower, Julio will just jump up and catch it. And Julio Jones should have 15 touchdowns every single year, no question about it. But he doesn't. So I think DK Metcalf becomes that guy for Seattle. And if they don't bring back Marshawn Lynch, they ride Chris Carson, have a new rookie running back, I just don't see them able to run the ball like they have been the last couple of years with who they currently have. So I think they throw the ball a lot more, and I think that benefits DK Metcalf. Again, I've got him at 12 in redraft, 13 in dynasty, and I don't know anybody else that's got him that high at all. I haven't seen it around anywhere, but I feel pretty comfortable about it, to be honest. And I've got DK at 12, AJ at 13, and then your boy Cortland Sutton at 14. But I have thought about moving Cortland Sutton up and above, depending on how Drew Lock does. But I just think that AJ Brown and DK Metcalf have a better opportunity right now.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting because I remember all the talk last year. Like, no one could figure out who think of it this way. Your wide receiver 1 is either CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy this year, unless you want to play the deep threat game with Henry Ruggs. Last year, I don't even know if there was a consensus. Like, many people liked N'Keal Harry. Many people liked AJ Brown. Many people liked DK. Many people liked none of them. Like, they're like, I don't know. Like, we'll see after the draft. But even after the draft, like, no, it was automatically N'Keal Harry just because he went round 1. But, like, I still feel like there was, like, question marks as to, is it really him? But now you look at it now, we have 3, even N'Keal Harry, even Deontay. There's like 5 or 6 candidates that could easily be the wide receiver 1 on their team next year.
Absolutely. And then the guy Preston Williams, who we're going to get to in a little bit. I mean, Miko Hardman basically could be Tyreek Hill if he goes down. I'm with you, man. I think this is a great class. Let's move on here. Next up, Deebo Samuel of the 49ers. Wide receiver 36, 11.8 fantasy points per game last year. I've got him at 28 in redraft, 23 in dynasty. I'm just not sure. The Niners have to bring in a. I'm not saying Deebo couldn't be an alpha receiver. I just don't know that that's his skill set. I think he's just so much better at kind of uh, being a sweep, being a runner, being somebody who can run all the routes. But if they could bring somebody in, like, I know everybody wants CeeDee Lamb, but if they brought somebody in like him who could be a prototypical one, I even think like a T. Higgins could be somebody that they might be able to find value on, who could be a number one there. I think that would actually help Deebo Samuel actually over the middle with your boy E. Sanders out of town now to New Orleans. So Deebo Samuel's with the 49ers. Obviously a great season last year. He was even better down the stretch in the playoffs. Shanahan knows how to use him. Very, very exciting player.
Yeah, so he's in that same. He was picked first in the round 2 actually. So he's the, in quotation marks, better receiver, I guess you could say. But same percentages: wide receiver 1, 14%; wide receiver 2, 22% of the 37. To me, it comes down to one thing, because I don't know how to project this guy. Like, I've thought about it. Like, I'm gonna have to do a lot of research regarding players like this, which there's not very many players like this, so it's gonna be tough. It comes down to one thing, and that is how many running backs they actually come into the season with. I think if Breida's gone and it's strictly just Raheem Mostert, I feel like they're still going to draft someone maybe in the 4th, 5th round to, I don't know who, I guess, maybe a pass-catching guy, so like Mostert maybe can just focus on like running, whatever the case may be. Jeff Wilson's not going to scare me in terms of touches, but I think even if it's Coleman and Mostert, I think Deebo has to be, I would draft him over Terry. I would probably draft him over A.J. Brown just because of the versatility. I'd wait around. I wouldn't just take Deebo straight up over A.J. Brown. But his skill set is so unique that no receiver can replace him. The alpha receiver on that team is George Kittle, but he is the actual wide receiver one. No matter, even if they got a guy like CeeDee Lamb, like, I don't want to say Jimmy G's never used one, but like the way they run their offense.
But he's never used one.
Yeah, like it's just weird. It's hard to project because everyone's saying receiver at 13. I don't think that's the case. I don't even remember what I did in our mock draft. I don't even remember what it was. But I think that they're going to go best available, right in with Deebo. I think Higgins is a perfect round 2 guy. I think if Mims falls, whatever the reason, Ayuk's still there, Bryan Edwards. There's plenty of guys they could go get. Because, I mean, guys, they made it to the Super Bowl last year with half of a running back group. Like, I mean, like, if they get a full year to do best available at defense, best available, Deebo Samuel year 2, T. Higgins year 1, we'll say, George Kittle again, Jimmy G year 3 or 4 on the team, I don't remember what it is. Nothing's going to skip a beat to me. Like, it wasn't like they were like, the Packers went 13-3. That was a fraud 13-3 team. The Niners were like consistent in what they did. Nothing was like out of the ordinary. Nothing is showing regression by any means. So like Deebo to me is kind of I kind of see the higher chance of him finishing as a wide receiver 1 just because he's going to run the ball and stuff more so than DK and AJ Brown and Terry McLaurin.
I agree. I like that T. I really like T. Higgins. I think that could be a value, and I think they could really benefit from that. Deebo Samuel, obviously being a Niner fan, I watched all the games, and he seemed like kind of a gadget player, right? Like I just didn't think of him as the number 1 guy because there's Kittle and there's the run game and there's Emmanuel Sanders. But when I crunched all the numbers, I was actually quite surprised to find out that so receiving alone, Deebo Samuel had 1 less reception and 100 less yards than DK Metcalf. The big difference was 3 touchdowns to DK's 7. However, if you add in his rushing ability, which Deebo Samuel has the rushing ability, 14 carries, 159 yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. So if you combine them, then Deebo Samuel actually had more total touches, more total yards, and 1 less touchdown than DK Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
So combining that together as a fantasy player, I'm loving that. I have Deebo lower and skyrocketing basically DK Metcalf because of the way I think the offenses will work out this year. But that being said, depending on what they bring in and how it works out with another receiver in San Francisco, we'll see if I can raise Debo a little bit. Love him in Dynasty, obviously, but in redraft, I'm pumping the brakes a little bit just because I'm not sure yet what they're gonna do. But love Debo, great player, fucking dude's an animal. That's another thing with these, Terry McLaurin also, but specifically AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, and Debo Samuel. When they have the ball in their hands, they basically become a running back, and it's kind of old school, refreshing to see receivers do that. So love Debo Samuel, and the next player is going to kind of open up a second tier a little bit. So before we get there, quickly, just in Dynasty specifically, how would you rank these first four players? AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel.
Oh gosh. I would go DK, Terry, AJ Brown, Debo. Probably the only guy that's going to do that. I just see the long game with Terry. The immediate game with DK and the long game with him too. I don't like receivers that are super hit and miss. And then when I do watch the games closely, just don't look good. Like, obviously he looked good because he just catch the ball and run for 80 yards, whatever. But, like, to be a long-term, like, that's why Julio's so good. Yeah, his run after catch ability is good, but he's still old. But he just dominates every corner he goes against. Like, there's no corner that's ever, like, James Bradbury is the only one everyone brings up. They're like, oh, he bullies him all the time. Okay, but he still gets like 80 yards and a touchdown in those games. Like, I don't know. I just don't, unless AJ Brown becomes consistent, maybe that team starts to throw the ball a little more. Maybe we see a little back to normal regression, which in the long term I think will help the Titans. I feel like I'll be on board, but I'm big on DK and Terry. In Dynasty, in redraft though, I think DK is probably like my number one. It's probably Debo at my number two.
Got it. Alrighty, and I will have those guys ranked. Debo, I've got it at 28 in redraft and 23 in Dynasty, but overall I've got in redraft I've got DK, AJ Brown, Debo, and then Terry, and it is the same in Dynasty. Let's move to our second wave here. These next four guys, or five guys rather, are players that did play as rookies, had decent seasons, but they're not at the level as those top four there, and that's Deontay Johnson, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Hunter Renfrow, Mecole Hardman, and Preston Williams. We could break these guys down a little bit quicker here. Let's start with Deontay Johnson, who quietly had a really nice season actually for the Steelers. Of course, the Steelers offense went to shit. Big Ben went down. Juju was hurt. James Conner got hurt. The season was kind of a mess with two subpar backup quarterbacks, lack of a run game, and the defense fluctuating all season. But Deontay Johnson had a pretty nice rookie season for the Steelers. Finished wide receiver 41, 10.3 PPR fantasy points per game. And, again, we're not sure what they're going to do. Juju's coming back. Big Ben's coming back. James Conner's coming back for now. A new receiver, maybe a new running back. James Washington's still there. There's a lot of moving parts here for the Steelers. How do you feel about Deontay, don't call me Thompson Johnson?
So he has the same hit rates as Terry, round three guys, 0% wide receiver 1 in year 2, 5% wide receiver 2, and a 20% wide receiver 3. That is out of 41 receivers. So that's quite a bit to be concerned about there. Like, obviously I have my concerns with Terry in redraft, saying I'm not going to draft him. I think it's going to be the same for Deontay Johnson. I think his floor will be okay because he's going to be the wide receiver 2, probably similar target share to what he had last year. But when it comes down to this far in the draft, I think I'll just rather go upside than Deontay Johnson. You can find Deontay Johnson Jr. 2 rounds later. I don't even know what the ADP is, but like, there's going to be players later that'll get you the same amount of production he will, unless he gets like 15 or unless he gets like 10 plus touchdowns. He's not going to be appealing. He might be a bye-week flex guy. But just the lack of upside with straight up the 20% out of 41. I don't know exactly how many people that is in year 2 from 2010 to 2019. Become a wide receiver 3. Like, I mean, just go somewhere else with that pick, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Juju should take back wide receiver 1 role. I'm not going to say he will. But I could easily see this team falling apart. Their defense is good, but say Big Ben's not even healthy. They're back in square one from last year. And Deontay Johnson was good, but like how good was he actually for you to play in your redraft team week after week? Dynasty, though, I have him in a lot of Dynasty leagues because he's a very good just prototype of receiver to have for a long time on an actual NFL team.
Yeah, I like it. 59 catches, 680 yards, and 5 touchdowns for Deontay Johnson. Let's move on to Hollywood Brown. For the Ravens, wide receiver 44, 11 fantasy points per game. I've got him at the back of my 30s. All these guys are pretty similar here. Marquise Brown had a huge opening day game against the Dolphins when Lamar Jackson just went nuts. I remember you texting me. I was actually running a music festival on opening day of football, which was fucked up. I didn't plan that right. But I remember you texting me within 20 minutes of the game starting, and your text just said, "It's Lamar Jackson season." And I was like, "Oh shit, what happened?" Yeah. Within about an hour and a half, he had like 5 touchdowns. So Marquise Hollywood Brown, if he's that number one still, of course, they've got Miles Boykin, who we'll mention later on. They've talked about maybe Antonio Brown, who's his cousin, who's working out with him, all this other shit. If we have the same Ravens team from last year, how are you feeling about Hollywood Brown?
Well, here's the hit rates I'll give to you. So obviously he was a round 1 receiver. So there's 32 of them in year 2, which is kind of weird, actually. I didn't think there's that many receivers going that high. 13% of them hit a top 12 finish. I mean, okay, Hollywood have to have an outrageous season in a run-first offense to finish top 12. But 38% finish as a top 24. That is very promising to me because then 47% finish as a top 36. Yet again, we're going to go look at that disparity between 13 to 38. That's 25. That's quite a bit. 38 to 47 is only 9. So obviously that's less. But I guess what I'm trying to say is when you think of Will Fuller, you think of his redraft like value as really good because obviously he gets hurt. But you can play him for those 2 or 3 weeks and you're going to win that week no matter what because he's getting you 30-plus points. You saw that week 1. One of my friends actually started him for who knows what reason in week 1. But, I mean, if you're following the hit rates with the skill set he has and just how good that offense is, if he stays healthy, like I feel like he's going to be I don't know ADPs. I have a feeling he's not going to rise in ADP just like N'Keal Harry's not because they were just a disappointing round 1 guy. And no one likes to play the long game. Even in Dynasty, no one likes to play the long game. They just like the immediate results. So I feel like he's going to be a fantastic 7th, 8th round guy to be your wide receiver 3 with humongous upside if he stays healthy. Because, I mean, he's going to be using the reverse game, the run game, the downfield game. When he'll be up, he was only on the field for, I think it was like 70-ish% of snaps, but he was 17th in points per route run. Obviously, that was kind of inflated just because he didn't run that many routes and had a really good boom game at the beginning of the year. But I think he's a perfect, I don't want to say late round guy, but he's a perfect 7th, probably right around where Will Fuller is going to go. I think I would rather have Hollywood Brown just due to the not as long length of injury record.
Love it. And actually, you just hit the nail on the head here. I'm looking at ADP, and right now, wide receiver 31 ADP. First pick in the 7th round, Marquise Brown. Wide receiver 32, second pick in the 7th round, Terry McLaurin, and Will Fuller right there with them as well. So that was a great comparison. And I'm totally with you, man. It's interesting because Marquise Brown seems so boom or bust, whereas like Will Fuller is boom or bust, and he has an injury risk. But it feels like I know I'm going to get more from Will Fuller for sure. Marquise Brown, for some reason, I'm still not 100% confident that I would be confident playing him every week. Last year, he was 46 receptions, 584 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 14 games. He's definitely going to grow. I think he's a great receiver. He'll be just fine. And Lamar Jackson obviously showed everybody that he could actually fucking throw the ball, which was I was trying to preach when he was a rookie, but nonetheless. So Hollywood will be just fine. We'll just have to see what happens with that wide receiver core and if they're going to throw him the ball more often now that, Hayden Hurst is out and they're trying to see if they get more balanced or they just continue to run the shit out of the ball, which I don't see them changing anytime soon. Let's move on to our next player, and that is Hunter Renfrow of the Raiders. Wide receiver 61, 8.6 fantasy points per game. He actually had a better season than Marquise Brown, just a few less touchdowns. So 49 receptions, 605 receiving yards, both better than Marquise Brown, but 3 less touchdowns at 4. He played only 13 games last year. I've got him way down in my 60s right now because I'm just not sure what the Raiders are going to do. Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota, a run first offense, maybe another receiver, Tyrell Williams still around, Darren Waller, Jason Witten. There's so many questions in Las Vegas. I'm just not sure, and I understand he's a good player. I liked him at Clemson a lot. I think he has a lot of upside, but the situation again does not impress me. I've got Hunter Renfro, way out of my receiver gets.
Yeah, so he was a round 5 guy. So the hit rate, the sample size is 35 players in the year 2. 3% hit the wide receiver 1, 3% hit the wide receiver 2, 11% hit top 36, the wide receiver 3, and then 17 hit top 48. So not good numbers all around the board. In games where Tyrell Williams and Darren Waller played, he was on pace for 148 points, wide receiver 45. I don't know where this breakout talk is. Obviously, it was because Brady was maybe going to go there, but people are like still like loving the value they get in dynasty startups. Tyrell had a 15% market share. Say they draft a receiver. Whatever rookie receiver is going to go into John Gruden's offense is going to have a 20+ market share. It's whoever they draft. It's going to be him and Darren Waller, the top 2. They're going to probably make up like 50% of the target share. Tyrell Williams is still there. Jason Witten is now there. They obviously signed him for a reason. They didn't sign him up for a Super Bowl tour when they're not even going to get to the playoffs. So they're obviously going to use him. Josh Jacobs' second year. So like with the hit rates, and if you just extrapolate, like obviously players get hurt, whatever. So like maybe his finish last year like actually looked good. Do you know how far he was behind Hollywood Brown in total points, or how far he was ahead?
For what? For overall ranking or
like points? If you have points, or maybe I don't know. I feel like what I'm trying to say is I just don't know where his upside is. Like Julian Edelman was so good as a slot receiver in PPR, that type of form of receiver, because he was the only guy there. Like I don't know, unless you're playing like a 4 or 5 flex league. Like your 10 points max from Hunter Renfrow is not it. So I don't know. I'm just not big. I wasn't really big on him at all. But then like people are kind of pumping him up and stuff. I just don't see any upside there. And whatever his ADP is, just fine. That's probably where you can go get Tony Pollard. I guarantee you, right around that same range in redraft. And he's going higher than I would imagine Pollard in Dynasty. So I'm just off any Hunter Renfrow. He's like 26 years old too, so like his 26-year-old breakout age or whatever it's gonna be. Not on board with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, I'm there's too many questions there for me to get excited. I've got him at redraft. I've got him at 62. In Dynasty, I've got him at 54. A little more optimistic, but not much going on there for Hunter Renfrow as of now. I mean, that could change certainly. And again, I think he as an individual is a great receiver and a great player. He could be just fine. But as a number 2 potentially with the Raiders, I don't see it. We had some success many years ago with Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree with Derek Carr, but they were super inflated with the number of touchdowns that they were able to get. I think a lot of those touchdowns go to Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs, not the receivers this year. So we'll see what happens. Let's move on here. We got maybe just 2 or 3 of these breakdown names, and then I just want to rattle off a couple other ones and let you pick who you want to talk to there. Next up, Mecole Hardman of the Chiefs. Finished as wide receiver 64. Did play all 16 games, 7.3 fantasy points per game. Obviously, this one is an outlier for sure. Listen to these stats. 26 receptions. 26 receptions. I'm pretty sure Julio Jones has almost had that in about 12 games of his career. 26 receptions, 538 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Incredibly inflated in that offense of being able to get those Tyreek Hill 80-yard touchdowns. So obviously, we're kind of in like the handcuff receivers. If Mecole Hardman is playing alongside Tyreek Hill, and they just brought back DeMarcus Robinson, Travis Kelce, obviously, I just don't think he's going to get it. However, if Tyreek Hill goes down, Mecole Hardman could be that guy. We've mentioned it on the podcast. He was drafted to be Tyreek Hill last year when Tyreek Hill was in some law issues and maybe wasn't going to play, so they just replaced him essentially. Mecole Hardman's a beast, but I just don't see the super upside in redraft. In Dynasty, I'd love to stash him on my bench. I've got him at 32 actually in Dynasty, right behind Hollywood Brown, and actually ahead of Deontay Johnson because I think he can fill that void if Tyreek were to leave for whatever reason in that offense in Kansas City. But redraft, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah, and they just signed back Sammy Watkins, I think, to a smaller sort of something. The thing with me where I see the upside if Tyreek goes down, but say Watkins left, I just don't see where you can't run an offense with the possession tight end and 2 burner receivers. Yes, it works for Tyreek, but that's because you have to cover Travis Kelce, and most of Tyreek's plays are in a broken pocket. It's just what it is. I just don't see where Andy Reid's not dumb enough to run out onto a field with McCole Hardman and Tyreek Hill on the outside going up against, well, I mean, if you get the Chargers now, Chris Harris is their 4th cornerback, so that's one. I mean, but I don't know. It's just I get the stash in Dynasty, but redraft, obviously there's upside. If Tyreek goes down, that doesn't really compel me to draft him because his ADP is going to be much higher than where his actual value is every year because someone's going to be maybe they use him as the wide receiver 2. Maybe they use him more, they're just going to see the same reasoning you did. But that's a universal reasoning, I feel more so than I don't know. It's actual hidden talent, I feel because obviously high draft capital, the situation Tyreek Hill was in last year, and we saw it in flashes this year, and Tyreek got hurt this year too, which kind of opened the door for that. So that's where I feel people are just always going to think about that, and the ADP is going to be way too high.
I've got Mecole Hardman at 45 in redraft, which I can't tell if that's high or low, but I've got him at 45. I'm going to mention just maybe 6 names behind him. Let me know if any of these guys you would rank over him right now in redraft PPR. Robbie Anderson, Anthony Miller, Jamison Crowder, N'Keal Harry, Golden Tate.
That's tough because I think in terms of redraft, I would actually Anthony Miller. I think I would actually play him my flex quite a bit without Taylor Gabriel there. I'd probably go N'Keal Harry, which we'll break down next, just due to the hit rate numbers and kind of maybe the scenery change in there. I could see a monster season if the quarterback favors him over Edelman. Yeah, Robbie Anderson, not a chance. They're the same receiver. They're the second deep threat on the team.
Yep.
Crowder, if I'm super desperate for PPR points, but I think ultimately you could just move down on the draft board. But yeah, I mean it's right around where his value is going to be. It's going to be hard to project him because I'm projecting off league averages, team averages, and no league average is 538 yards on 26 catches. So it's gonna whatever I project him, it's not gonna line up any single way. But
no, those are just Mahomes Madden numbers that the Chiefs get.
Yeah.
ECR right now has Mecole Hardman at 53. I've got him at 45, so a little bit lower. All right, man, let's move on to maybe our last full breakdown. We can make this one quick. I just want to mention him because he was busted up. This is Preston Williams of the Dolphins. He finished 73. Again, I'm not worried about that because he basically played half a season. He was out for the season after week 9 with an injury. However, 11.4 fantasy points per game, which would have been 5th on this list. Pretty impressive. So just 32 catches, 428 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the Dolphins, but played half a season. I know we can't just double those numbers, but hypothetically, if we doubled those numbers to give him a full season, he would actually lead this group in receptions. He'd have 800-plus yards and 6 to 7 touchdowns, which would be quite nice. Preston Williams is pretty impressive. Of course, we have Fitzmagic for now. We're going to have either Herbert or Tua for the Dolphins. There's a lot to have happen there. Of course, we have finally Devontae Parker coming through this year. Mike Gesicki had a great breakout as well. A lot going on here with the Dolphins. Maybe just a quick mention of Preston Williams. He's just a name that I think could definitely be valuable that can certainly get thrown away or lost because he was not around for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an undrafted free agent, so I don't have any hit rate numbers for that. It's just tough to kind of gauge that because there's different contract, whatever the case may be. Obviously, it's just tough to find the actual data for that. The thing that it comes down to is he going to be ready week 1? Because he tore his ACL, so it was going to be close. Now he can't get medicals. So it'll be interesting. I think we'll know come draft time because if he's not even going to be close due to the situation, the Dolphins will take someone round 2 range area, around 2-3 range. So we'll see. He's a beast. Dynasty though, I have him in a lot of dynasty leagues. I was on him last year on the podcast the first couple weeks, and then I was on Devontae Parker literally for the same reasons. Ryan Fitzpatrick is that main reason, but yeah, I mean, I think he's great type of receiver to stash, like a taxi squad stash, like we were saying, but even just on your bench because he's going to return value sooner rather than later for sure. So I mean, it's tough to like kind of gauge his total value because he did produce, but he's just the injuries not great for the current situation. I think one more guy I think I want to kind of recap before N'Keal Harry before we finish up here. So obviously he was a wide receiver drafted in the first round. So his hit rate numbers are 13% to hit wide receiver 1 next year, 38% to hit wide receiver 2. So I was kind of hinting to it. I think a scenery change, well, if there's a scenery change, that means like you get like a Cam Newton or whatever the case may be. Because I think Stidham kind of plays like Brady, like in a way, like they'll run the same offense. I think it'll help Harry to me. Because obviously the hit rate numbers match up. He was drafted in the first round. So it's not like he's just like washed to the side. Like they're not going to use him. Because, I mean, Belichick's not stupid. So there's kind of a bounce back for him. I think I'd have him over like Deontay Johnson and the rest of everyone below him. I would easily if he's my wide receiver 3 come redraft time, I feel like it's pretty safe. Just because I would play the breakout with him, which wouldn't really even be a breakout because they're basically just using him how they should have used him last year.
So, N'Keal Harry, unfortunately, he didn't even play until week 11. And then he was sparsely used anyway. We all know that, unfortunately, the Patriots are kind of all over the board with how their offense went. So I love N'Keal Harry. I think he's going to be a beast. I think there's going to be a huge upgrade there for the Patriots. Back to Preston Wilson for 1 second. It does, just because you mentioned, will he be ready? It does look, according to the Miami Herald last month, it looks like he will be ready for week 1. So let's just hold for that. I am going to just blast off. We're getting long in the tooth here, so we'll wrap this up here in a second. But I'm just going to blast off a couple more names. Let me know if any of these guys spark any interest for you overall. Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, both on the Cardinals. Paris Campbell for the Colts. Jacoby Myers also with the Patriots. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Riley Ridley, Miles Boykin, and Jalen Hurd.
Yeah, the only one would be Paris Campbell. He was a round 2 drafted receiver. The hit rates, I don't have the exact number of how many people. I just closed on my browser for some reason, but it was 14%, 22%, 27%. That's one wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Phillip Rivers, as much as he's not that great, he just kind of intrigues me. He's gotten Mike Williams to 1,000 yards receiving in the last 2 years. I think Campbell's a better, more athletic receiver. He'll be very, I don't want to compare him to Debo, but they're going to use him in a creative way. That's what they drafted him to do. You stick T.Y. on the outside. If Campbell can stay healthy, I could see like a wide receiver 3. I don't know, because with the hit rates, I could easily see a wide receiver 2 season. That seems super high, but the lack of other weapons, I don't think they're ultimately going to draft a receiver with this lineup, but I think he'll be another good, kind of a long Hollywood. People are going to forget about him just due to what happened last year, but all the numbers and the draft capital kind of line up for him to have a bounce back year. So I think I'll have a couple shares of him, and I have him in Dynasty just kind of stashed right now.
I think that's a great call. Basically, he had a rough season last year. Injuries crushed him as a rookie. He had a bad hamstring, a sports hernia, broken hand, and then broke his foot in week 14. But he has shed the walking boot, so he should be good to start 2020. Paris Campbell there. A couple names that I'm interested in. Andy Isabella, I know, blew up the combine last year with the 40 and all that. I think they're pretty set, although Hakeem Butler, I think, is a sleeper that everyone's going to forget about. I think he could be a beast there, Iowa State. And then J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I think, has an opportunity to, if he's legit, to be a number 1 in Philadelphia somehow. Alshon Jeffrey is just not the guy anymore. He's busted up. And it was basically said that Arcega-Whiteside played beat up most of last season. So I do think he has an opportunity there. Miles Boykin with the Ravens, who I mentioned kind of already with Hollywood Brown, and Jalen Hurd have an opportunity with the Ravens and the 49ers. Both of those guys were basically injured and didn't have an opportunity last year. But I think both those guys have a good opportunity for 2020.
For sure. I think there's a lot of bounce back candidates that are now that you look at it, this wide receiver class was stacked actually. Like Jalen Hurd and those guys were still good. Miles Boykin's still good. So I'm interested to see how this kind of plays out this season.
Dude, Riley Ridley, we didn't even talk about. Jacoby Myers, we're not talking about. And those guys are plenty fine as well. So I totally agree with you. I think they're going to be awesome. That's a lot, man. We're getting long in the tooth here, so we can shut it down. For the sophomore wide receivers, I'm going to blaze their names real quickly. A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown, Hunter Renfrow, Mecole Hardman, Preston Williams, N'Keal Harry, Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, Paris Campbell, Jacoby Myers, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Riley Ridley, Miles Boykin, and Jalen Hurd. Always a pleasure, my man. Before we get out of here, why don't you let everybody know what is to preview for the end of the month?
Yeah, for sure. April 26th, the Fantasy Stock Exchange. I don't want to label it as their draft guide. It's the collaborative draft guide. A ton of people are helping us out.
It's a family thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's going to be on that site. Just easier for me to manage, I guess, and to sort of get everything flowing into one spot. But April 26th, the free portion of the rookie content. So the rookie content will be free. Ultimately, that'll be on the draft guide come summer, but we just want to release that part to show what we can do, what the whole group can do. And then this summer I have a ton of very unique plans that are going to be very awesome for the draft guide. And I mean, as much as it's not about money, we're not going to be charging a lot, guys. So definitely look at our content and hop on board now before the summer starts.
I love it. Fantastic, man. It's going to be a great preview of what our team is capable of and the network in which we're affiliated with. So it's not just TCK people. It's going to be a larger network collaborating on bringing you, the listener, the best content that we use and that we drift out to the rest of the community. So if you like what you're hearing and you've appreciated us so far in this longer episode, make sure to subscribe right here on the YouTube and leave a comment down below of which of these wide receivers you enjoy the most. And also, please follow us on social medias, Instagram at fantasyfootball_TCK pod, on Twitter at TCK_pod, Facebook at the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast page. And, of course, you can find all of our content, all of our articles, and all of our social media links and everything on our website at tckpod.com. And, of course, if you're listening on the podcast, leave a rate and review wherever you're listening. Next episode on Thursday, we're going to be wrapping up the sophomore tight ends. And then we will get into the NFL draft stuff coming up. I can't believe the draft, assuming it's still happening, is just around the corner. We're going to have a very, very special guest, Jonathan Rifkin, coming on. We'll explain more about what he's about on the next episode. But until then, for Lucas Kaser, I'm Sky Guasco, and we are out of here.